So first of all, thank you everyone for attending. Hope this is enlightening. I know it's kind of outside of DFIR specifically, but we hope that you could see the value in the application that it provides.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Arun Warikoo, and I lead the America's Cyber Threat Intelligence team at BNP Paribas. I also chair the FSI Cyber Threat Hunting Working Group. Anyone here from the financial services sector? Fine. So you should pretty much join that group as well. So just a bit about myself. I have a 15 years background in cyber, basically focusing on cyber threat intel, hunting and detection. I also like to research, especially my focus area is cyber criminal profiling and threat actor attribution. And I'm also a wannabe podcaster. So I have a podcast known as Cyber Frontlines, which you can go to. So good luck.
And I'm Lee Archinal. I have almost 15 years in IT now, but it started as a network admin in the U.S. Army, where the puzzle and the challenge came that I was really drawn to. Once I transitioned to civilian life, I landed in a SOC at a local energy company. And that's where I found my love of event logs and Sysmon, and really started taking my early steps into threat hunting. I was part of the detection engineering team that once it's like all started making sense, I was like, we can do this better. Then I spent a year at a bank, which, not to insult anyone, I did not like that. That was not the environment for me. Then I stepped out of there and landed in Cyborg Security, which was recently acquired by Intel 471. I've been a threat hunter ever since. And I'm working with our customers to mature their threat hunting programs. That involves a lot of looking at their data, telling them what they could do better and helping out. But I was also privileged to build a course curriculum for Black Hat US 23 and 24, which I built and conducted, and we had a good turnout. And then I also do threat hunt workshops for the general public that you can join on LinkedIn. Basically, my goal was to be that resource that I needed when I was growing up, to get that hands-on experience that if you want it, we'll give you some data, we'll give you some instructions and so on. That's just a little bit about me.
So with that, let's take a look at the agenda. The first thing is to pretty much understand what threat hunting is, and most importantly, what threat hunting is not. So the first section, we are going to walk you through what exactly threat hunting is, what are the objectives, what you can accomplish from that. Next, we are going to dive deeper into two different approaches for threat hunting. One is structured, one is unstructured, both different but very, very complementary in order to, that would actually help you within your, if you're building a threat hunting program. And finally, we want to leave you with some key takeaways that you can take back to your organizations and basically use that while building your programs as well. So with that, let me hand it over to Lee to walk you through threat hunting.
So don't be or tricked. The 4 bullet points, we're not going to be out of here quick. We are very long-winded and we like to talk about it because it's passion. So bear with us. So threat hunting 101. Basically, the goal here is to take the scientific method and apply it to event logs. All those great reports that you read about MITRE, TTPs, behaviors, and so on. Our goal is to take a look at that and say, all right, what would that look like in our environment? What would that look like in our logs? Because really where I sit, it's in SIMs and it's in EDRs. It's not handling the computers that are compromised, just looking at all the evidence that's been collected. So what it isn't is we aren't looking at an article and taking a bunch of IOCs and giving our customers that list and saying, here you go, here's your threat hunt for the day. While I completely understand the value of an IOC scan, because I completed many of them as an incident responder, it's not what threat hunting is. We like to focus on the indicators of attack, or the IOAs. Sometimes I just call them artifacts. But the big difference there is the IOCs are point in time, whereas the indicators of attack and the behaviors are normally consistent based on the threat actor. And just a good example is adversaries abusing the C user's public directory, right? How many times have you seen malware landing there? Or how many times have you seen an executable or a script or a DLL with a single character, right? That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for malicious.exe. So we're trying to help create things that will help capture these behaviors in a way that you can put up on the shelf and they'll last. It's proactive. It's trying to fill that gap that detection engineering really kind of leaves. Being a detection engineer myself, at one point, I looked at internal processes. I looked at the internal workings of the environment to decide how should this function and how shouldn't it. But once you're done there and you've defined bad, you kind of like set it and forget it. Threat hunting is looking at things like, and I'll give you the best example that I have is PowerShell encoded commands. As an early incident responder, I always thought PowerShell encoded commands were bad because of Emotet, because of malicious Word documents, you name it. As I come to sit with our customers, that's one of the things that they say is the loudest hunt query that we've provided. And looking at it, I can see why. Tools, EDR, MDR tools, they like to communicate. And I know there's one specifically I'm not going to call out, but it floods their environment full of encoded commands. So working through that process of finding maliciousness in a sea of false positives is what we have to do. So you can't just create that detection of saying, I'm looking for PowerShell encoded command. It's going to take some work. And it's ongoing. This isn't something that you just set and forget, like a detection or a static alert. But really, now I do want to say there's a caveat there that a lot of tools we work with have scheduled searches. And I'm all for that. That's not like automating or creating a detection engineering. What I say is though, if you're gonna schedule a hunt, you're gonna also review that data. The goal is to be constantly reviewing the data, looking at it, seeing if anything changed, see if you get anything back that looks normal or is an anomaly, and then act on it. But you're constantly doing this because just because the adversary got into your environment, it doesn't mean that they didn't gain persistence. They might do that next week or tomorrow or whenever. So those are the things that you have to do or that we define as threat hunting. And like I said, we kind of like to think it's a scientific method. You have a hypothesis, you conduct research, you say, hey, what would that look like? What logs do I need? What tools do I need, et cetera? And then you build the pseudo query. Pseudo query kind of came about whenever I was in college, trying to learn Python and struggling. And the instructor was like, hey, write down your logic first. This is kind of the same thing, especially because we use, or we run into clients that use a lot of different tools. So the first thing is if you're going to create this, write it in a way that's human readable and like tool agnostic, but easily understood. So you could say child process name is this, command line argument contains this. Using those things gets the logic down. You could pass it around your team and they could say, yeah, this checks out. Then you translate. Then after that, there's a couple things that could happen. Emulation if needed. Emulation is very critical to threat hunting. And we'll get to this in a second. But it's not a binary process. It's not, yes, we found bad or no, we didn't. There's a lot of different things you can discuss in there. But emulation helps prove, and I'm going to go back to that trust but verify kind of idea. But when you emulate something and generate the logs needed to validate your query, you're proving and helping support your hypothesis. Performing log analysis and tuning, that's when you run your query and boom, you have all this evidence already. Now, what do you do with it? You start pruning it, finding what's acceptable, finding what's normal, and then building that exclusion list so that you can better see suspicious or malicious activity. And why do we do it? Once again, it's trying to cover down for what detection engineering can't. Verifying visibility is a big thing. You can create the best query that you can. It could involve a bunch of joins, a bunch of transforming the data, but as soon as you throw in your, whatever tool you're using, if it doesn't return anything, the answer isn't that's because it doesn't exist in your environment. It could be a gap in visibility. And if you have a gap in visibility, you have a bigger problem on your hands. And really to learn from our environment. That tribal knowledge that some graybeards have learned throughout 10, 15 years in an organization, that's not easily transferable because it's all knowledge. If you can get data to support that and show the people that this is the baseline, this is our tribal knowledge, these are the things that exist already, then that's perfect. And that's why we threat hunt as part of that discovery process. And finally, the threat hunt outcomes. Metrics get tough when it comes here because it's not, it fired this many times or no, it didn't. But finding maliciousness is the number one. Confirming visibility coverage with emulation. Again, why is that important? Confirming a visibility gap is just as important. You can't see or you can't detect what you can't see. And then promoting a hunt to a detection, eventually going through that process of tuning and tuning and tuning. If you can actually create a detection based off it, great. And then the big old bucket of administrative issues, that's shadow IT, ignoring best practices or going against, acceptable use policies and stuff.
All right, let's jump into structured threat hunting. And basically, what is structured threat hunting? I just want to emphasize that it's an intelligence-driven approach that focuses on detecting malicious activity based on defined objectives and established hypotheses. And the outcome, basically, the goal of your threat hunting should be to identify activity that was not previously identified, malicious activity, that is, but also the overarching goal should be to actually improve your security posture through augmenting detection capabilities that we highlighted in the previous slide as well. So before we dive deeper into it, I just wanted to walk you through some prerequisites if you want to follow down this path of structured threat hunting. The first one is you need to have a good understanding of your adversary. Basically, that is why it is an intel-driven approach. And what that essentially means is that you ought to focus on the threat actors that are relevant and potentially most impactful to your organization. The second one is you need to have a good understanding of the telemetry within your network, the data sources that are available to you, the data sources that you can actually use to create the artifacts. So that is very, very important as you go down this path. Finally, you need to have a good understanding of your normal, what is the baseline. And as Lee touched upon earlier, it's very, very tough to do that. And one of the good things about this process is that you can actually gain that knowledge as you're going through this path. So as an example, I can give you, there are a lot of threat actors out there, especially ransomware groups that like to stage their data before they actually exfiltrate that. Some of the tools that they use is WinSCP, 7-Zip. These are tools that are also used legitimately within your organization or could be used. So if you are looking to hunt for a technique of data staging and you find a lot of it, do not assume that this is something you have hit a gold mine of malicious activity. It could all be normal. So you need to do that analysis to figure out whether this is something legitimately being used within your organization or not. So, and that is the time you need to basically document what you find in terms of baseline. So with these prerequisites in mind, let's take a look at the key characteristics of a structured threat hunt. Firstly, it's hypothesis driven. So what that means is you formulate a hypothesis that is basically driven by the current or the emerging threat landscape. And you can also look at past incidents, or you can look at the previous analysis that you did on certain threat actor campaigns. Secondly, it's very important to have a defined set of objectives. What are you trying to accomplish while you are doing this threat hunt? And you also need to scope that properly. So what you want to do is there are multiple approaches that we'll walk you through in the next couple of slides. Basically, you need to have a defined objective on what exactly you're trying to hunt. Are you looking for a threat actor campaign? Are you looking for certain TDPs? Are you looking for malware of interest? Or are you looking for certain tools that are being used maliciously as well? Finally, it's a repeatable process and it can be refined over time. All right, so structured threat hunt is very effective if you follow a sequence of steps that we call the threat hunt lifecycle. And it's basically a 6-step process. The first step is you ought to research threats that are relevant to your organization. That is the most important thing that you have to do when you go down this path. You want to examine the techniques and behaviors that were used in those campaigns, especially, and basically also look at some of the, what we call the collection sources, some of the reports that you can actually leverage to do that kind of research. You also need to have a good understanding of the data sources, like we touched upon earlier, basically, on what kind of data sources you could use to create those pseudo queries that pointed out earlier. Once you have done that, the second step is you want to formulate a hypothesis. It is as simple as, a simple statement that is testable, right? So as an example, if your objective is to hunt for a scattered spider campaign and you're specifically hunting for a technique on persistence, and you know that scattered spider is known to use RMM tools for persistence. So your example or your hypothesis could be as simple as I'm looking for potential abuse of RMM tools within my. So once you have done that, figured out your hypothesis, you want to translate that into search queries or pseudo queries. And this is where your understanding of the data sources comes into play. There could be multiple data sources that you can leverage to basically build out your queries. And the fourth step, again, can't emphasize that enough, emulation. You want to validate your hunt query. You want to gain that confidence that I'm actually looking for the right stuff. So which is why emulation comes into play. And there are multiple ways you can do that. So you can actually engage with your purple team. They can do the emulation for you and basically use that information, or you can also pretty much leverage the atomic tests in your lab and do that. So once you have validated your query, the next step, execution and analysis. This is where you want to determine whether the queries uncovered any activity that supports your hypothesis. So again, taking a look at the same example of RMM for persistence. Again, these are tools that are legitimately used within organizations as well. So if you see a lot of hits, again, that is not an indication of a malicious activity. You need to further analyze it, work with your other teams to determine whether there are certain RMM tools used legitimately within your organization, and then come up with your analysis and conclusion whether this is malicious or not. So just a tip, so usually what threat actors do is they like to deploy multiple types of RMM tools out there, just in case if one is found out, they at least have some other tool that you can use. So if you see something like that, if you see multiple RMM tools in your analysis, that is an indicator of something malicious going on. Investigate it further. Finally, post on actions or outcomes. So there could be multiple outcomes that can come out of your threat hunt exercise. The first one, escalation. Again, if you see something malicious, that is at that point, it's no longer a threat hunt exercise. It turns into an incident response exercise. You want to escalate that and be done with it. If you do not find any malicious activity, there still are multiple outcomes that could come out of your threat hunt exercise, which Lee also pointed out to promoting your hunt to detection. So if you, while working closely with your detection engineering teams, you find out that there's no detection in place currently for this kind of technique, you want to convert your successful queries into detections. And it can also be used for validating your controls, your detective controls. An example that I can give is, say, for example, while working with your detection engineering teams, you do find there are sufficient detections in place to defend against such techniques. That is a very, very good outcome as well, because now you know that you have controls in place to take care of such techniques. Finally, document, make sure you increase your knowledge base. Basically, whatever you found during that exercise, you actually done.
Hey, you mind if I say something real quick?
Sure.
All right, one thing I do want to stress about emulation, because this does get brought up. Two things. If you're testing a hypothesis, try to get as close to your hypothesis as you can so the scope is maintained. Second, please do it in a lab environment. Please don't go home and say, hey, Lee and Arun said this. Let's test wiping all our shadow copies in production, right? Please do that in a lab environment that is closely resembles your production environment as possible, and try to be as benign as you can about it. Try not to be destructive.
Good point. So briefly, how do you go about the first step, which is researching threats? So basically, I just wanted to highlight some of the collection sources that I really love to use. There are a lot of that I highlighted here, but also wanted to specifically highlight DFIR reports. They are a treasure trove, and essentially not only providing you end-to-end intrusion campaigns, but also the right artifacts that you can use and convert into your hunt queries. And then again, you also want to, at this stage, define your objective, which is where your approach comes into play. Do you want to look at certain TDPs? Want to look at threat actor campaign? Do you want to look at malware? So just wanted to add here. So when we talk about behavioral, we are essentially talking about techniques. We want to be as specific as possible. We want to go to the sub-technique level. As an example here that we'll highlight is P105001, command and scripting in PowerShell. And as you all know, PowerShell is abused a lot by everybody, all the adversaries. And when you start working on your hypothesis, as is pointed out here, would be simply, I believe that there's an abuse of PowerShell going on in the environment. The next step is to then research and identify the log sources that you could use to build your artifacts, and then also understand how does this look like in the wild, right? And then convert it into your pseudo hunt package. So what we wanted to highlight here with a couple of DFIR reports that provide you exactly that treasure trove of information on what PowerShell abuse looks like and what kind of data sources you could use. And here's an example of one of the hunt queries where encoded PowerShell command executed that drops session gopher. Basically, again, from DFIR report, you can see the commands that were used there. And you can use that information to figure out what kind of data sources you could. So you could use Windows events log, you could use EDR, you could use Sysmon to actually convert that and translate that into a query. And just giving you an example on what the logic looks like. Pointed out, it's very important to first come up with the logic and then convert that into a hunt package. Here's another example of encoded PowerShell command executed from a Cobalt Strike beacon. Again, logic is there. You can use multiple data sources to do that. But it's very, very important to understand that when we are looking at a hunt package for PowerShell abuse, it could be very, very noisy, simply because it's also used by sysadmins as well. So this is where your understanding of what is normal within your environment is very, very important. And also, you want to, whenever you use this type of hunt query, you want to keep it time-bound, and you want to look for outliers, because otherwise, you're going to be flooded with a lot of hits. And one of the things that I like to do is I always like to look at the parent process. So if I see something like notepad.exe or winword.exe, that is trouble to me. So I would definitely, that would warrant more investigation. So some of the ways that you can, when you use this hunt query, you can dig deeper into it. Next approach is adversarial. So this is basically your objective is to hunt for a specific threat actor campaign that you came across that could target your organization on intelligence. And basically what you want to do here is you want to compare your intelligence reports, collect the artifacts from there. And recently I came across a very good report from Microsoft Threat Intel Center, especially on a campaign that they termed as Bad Pilot. And that particular report that not only provided an information about the end-to-end intrusion campaign, but also provided the same artifacts that I could use to convert them into a hunt package. So so you can use that if you're going this route, especially intelligence reports. Another approach is going through the malware chains. So you can actually do your own malware analysis and identify the artifacts. or another approach could be you are looking for certain reports. And just wanted to highlight one of the reports that Trend Micro published, which was that Blackbuster ransomware used Crackbot for post-compromise discovery activity. And so if you're looking for or hunting for a technique which is recon post-compromise, this is one of the good reports that you can look into. So you can formulate a hypothesis that says threat actor may be conducting a discovery activity post-compromise. And this is exactly how it looked like in that report. So basically, Quackbot was running inside a process known as WER-MTR.exe and conducting automated recon. So in a sequence, you'll see when this process was executing, these were the commands that were being executed in a sequence. So this is also an example of process injection, by the way. Unlike the previous hunt package on partial abuse, this is very, very high. This is high fidelity because you are not going to see this process do this kind of stuff. This is a process that is invoked when system crashes and you want to send a crash report to Microsoft so that they can fix that bug. So this is a very, very high fidelity hunt package. You see, if you get a hit on something like this, that definitely is not good. Finally, another approach is you specifically want to look for tools. You can, some of them we have highlighted here. And I just wanted to briefly do another query here that especially, again, looks for discovery conducted by AdFind. With that, let me see to walk you through unstructured hunts.
So if you're in an organization that has a really strong CTI team, that structured hunt should be like the first step to take into it if you are initiating this program. Simply because you have all that intel. And really what threat hunting is just making that intel actionable. It's not redoing anything. It's just taking it and finding what they found already and putting it into action, which is sometimes a gap that we, that I've seen with our customers. They'll produce some really, really nice threat intel, but then I ask the question like, okay, what do you do with that? And they're like, it's not tactical enough, you know? So we try to help out with it. But unstructured threat hunting can be done by anyone that has an EDR or I should say a centralized logging tool. And really, this is the hunts that you can do to start baselining. You know, what are we looking for? You know, what programs run in our environment? Where are these things located and so on? So that you can start learning what is normal and then you can identify what is abnormal. All right, I'm gonna kind of run low on time, so I'm gonna just kind of run. Now, there are a couple ways to do this. The best way I figured out, you can go to the next slide, is going through aggregation. If you have a tool that aggregates data, that's wonderful because that's the best way to figure it out. And this is just an example. And you could, and I wouldn't say unstructured hunts aren't hypothesis based. I would say they're more event type based. So if you want to say, okay, what processes are being executed, or where are new files being created most of the time, or what are my normal network connections? I like to take it from that hypothesis level to the more general network connect level. So from there, and this, you know, Splunk terms, if I'm just looking for the image of being command.exe, we can take a look and see the results like this. Now, you may think that, hey, we're looking for abnormal things, so the top hitters are going to be the loudest and normal. Usually that is the case. But what I found out is that if you go below 1, or if you say, instead of using top, we're going to use rare and flip the script and say, hey, let's look at the unique events that are happening too. Especially when you're looking for like process chains and process relationships. What I mean by that is when, you know, what's the parent process? What's the child process? And what are the command line arguments that are run most commonly in that process chain? If you can identify that whole thing and exclude the whole thing, you can now say that's acceptable behavior. Now, when you go to the bottom, you would think that that one event that has a 1 next to it would be abnormal. That's not normally the case, because what I've come across is that those rare, unique events in process chains, the only thing that's different is like the username. So everything that follows C:users blank, that next thing, that's what makes it look unique. So it takes some time to look at this and figure out like, okay, well, these last 500 events are actually the same. So how can we generalize this process relationship so that we can knock out a bunch of them? And then once you start looking at the middle, that's where the interesting stuff starts to come out, because that's the stuff that kind of lives in there, may be compromised. And honestly, I should say the best outcome we found is we found pen testers, which was always fun because, you know, red team or blue team beating the red team, you know, it's what we do, but not always. Go ahead, slide. We can also use, and I know AI and ML is like a big buzzword, but when we're talking about like Splunk, I love their machine learning toolkit. I love the fact that they provide you with this algorithm that you can say, here's my query, here's what fields I want to look at that to be considered anomalous, and you tell me what if it's an outlier or not. Now that anomaly detection section, that's me saying I'm looking at the image in the command line as the anomalous parts. Then it will say, yes, it's anomalous, and give it a 1, or no, it's not, and give it a 0. So go ahead, next slide. And really, that looks at it. This is where I think it shines, because it looks at a large chunk of data and says, here's all the things that we're looking at. At the top, we have the outliers, and then they'll tell you why it's an outlier. And you know, that's the command line arguments, which I find very appealing. Also, I really like that they provide you what they've said are not outliers, because looking through that, they could have missed something, right? Trust but verify, it's a robot, it's a machine, it's an algorithm. Go through and see what you're looking at. So, and I say that's expert mode, but really I think we're getting closer with the tools and stuff that it's getting easier to do.
All right. So some of the key takeaways, especially from the structured threat hunting, is understand it is intel-driven. You want to focus on threats that are relevant to your organization. And structured means hypothesis-based. You want to formulate a hypothesis and try to say that this is actually from your analysis you derive whether it's true or not. The other thing that I wanted to point out was scalability. How do you scale your threat hunt? Well, one of the things that you can do is to build a threat hunt library, which essentially allows you to map the techniques that you're hunting into the hunt packages. And usually, more often than not, you'll see threat actors using the same techniques again and again. So if you have that technique already taken care of in your hunt library, you can pretty much reuse that again.
So my key takeaway, structured hunts, normally for emerging threats. The APT groups that are making the news, you know, look at their behaviors and go. Once that, you know, once that's over, or, you know, if it is over and you have a second to breathe, go to the unstructured hunt, learn your environments, see what's going on, see what might be anomalous and so on. And really let the, like unstructured, think data driven. Let the data tell you what's normal. But most importantly, keep the human in the process. You can automate the contextualization, you can automate the data collection, but at the end of the day, make sure that one of your threat hunters, or if it's you, is making the decisions on, yes, this is malicious or not. So, well, with that, questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much.